people who haven't spent a lot of time in deep wilderness mostly don't know how much happier they would be if they were. Mostly don't know how many of their pains and illnesses and psychological disorders would go away, how much of the striving is actually a result of emptiness from living in an environment in which we don't have intimate relationships with other people in nature. If you spend time with a indigenous culture and see how much more they understand the language of all the animals, most people aren't aware of how impoverished their life is, that they don't know how to communicate to the animals, that they don't know what the whole world around them is saying all the time, and that their mind is never still and quiet. So it's hard to feel bad about missing something you've never experienced and you don't know exists. Also, when the addict is coming down, they don't want happiness. They want a hit of the supply, right? If somebody's coming down on heroin, they don't want to see a beautiful sunset. They don't want a deep conversation with a friend. Everything else is meaningless because they have created a hypernormal stimuli that allows them to only get happiness from a very narrow thing. It's actually deadened their ability to get happiness from lots of things. So there are reward circuits in us that are more addictive. There are other reward circuits that are not addictive, that are more actually so the addictive reward circuit will give you a very quick spike, and then it will drop you. And then that makes a craving for another spike. And obviously sugar does this, and likes on social media do this, and using filters to look more beautiful than you are does this, and etc. Most of the things in our world do some version of this. And then in the low, then you crave more of that thing. And so you get, of course, more bipolar type experience, but you also get an erosion of your baseline over time. There's less and less things that make you happy. You more and more need those stimulus, and you need larger amounts of them. The types of reward circuits that lead to psychologically, physiologically healthy people are ones that don't give you as much spike as quickly, but raise your baseline over time. And so the type of reward you get from exercising, the type of reward you get from like meaningful conversation with friends, from helping somebody, from time in nature, you get reward circuits from those things, but they're different in kind than the reward circuits you get from fast food or from porn or from social media or those other things. But it's very hard to monetize those things on the supply side. It's very hard to sell you any of the things that on your deathbed you will say are what you wish you had spent all of your time with. Every person on their deathbed says, I wish I had spent more time with my family and with my kids and with the people that I loved, and telling them that I loved them, and working less and pursuing things less. And none of the hits that they were spending their life pursuing are at all meaningful in those reflections. But because the supply side can basically market to the addictive impulse better, and it's important to understand that, like, from a business perspective, especially once you have a fiduciary responsibility to maximize shareholder profit, you're like legally bound to that as a director of a public corporation. One of the core goals is maximize the lifetime revenue of a customer. And addiction is awesome for lifetime revenue of a customer. So when you look at the emergence of fast food and processed foods, whether we're talking about Hostesses and Twinkies or candies or Coke or McDonald's, they're basically combinations of salt, fat, and sugar, different combinations of that with different texture profiles that were actually scientifically optimized to maximize addiction. There were lots of split tests done to see which ones had the people crave them the most again. Yet the reason that people in an evolutionary environment, the reason that things that had salt and fat and sugar gave people more of a kind of dopamine hit was because in an evolutionary environment, pre-agriculture, those things were very rare. It was hard to get much of them. And so if you got them, there was an incentive to go find the things that were evolutionarily rare and that were useful. As soon as we make them hyper abundant, then people are dying of the excess of them. We've built a world we're not actually genetically fit to, and then exploit the weakness of that rather than try to support people to navigate it well. But it's also that those nutrients were bound with vitamins and minerals and a lot of other nutrients simultaneously. So the fast food removes all the micronutrients, optimizes those things, optimizes addiction. And so you can have people who are actually dying of malnutrition while they're obese because they're so deficient in micronutrients. And So what fast food is to food, where you just take the maximally addictive part and strip out why we were even attracted to it in an evolutionary environment, strip out all of what's good in it, is also what social media relationships are to human relationships, is also what porn is to human intimacy, is also what the news is to the desire to understand the world you live in, is what productivity is relative to meaning, right? Stripping out a very narrow, aligned with the interest of the market hit that still has that same thing, then you will feel a need for greater and greater productivity. And of course, that is great from a GDP maximizing perspective and not great from a deathbed reflections or the quality of how children are raised or the quality of the environment perspective.